Hey y'all, it's T-Dog back with another video. So, I want to touch on something that's been happening the past 4 or 5 days over in LA. I know most of y'all seen everything that's been going on with the LA riots and all the protests and all the bullshit that's going on over there, right? And if y'all, well, first off, I want to say if y'all support that, go to Mexico or wherever they're fighting for, right? I mean, I know they're fighting for Mexico apparently somehow. I mean, it's probably the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You're gonna get mad that you came over here illegally and you got deported. What do you think was gonna happen? Really? I mean, since when is it okay to do illegal things? All of a sudden, it's just okay to be illegal and do illegal stuff, and that's all right, right? Because what? Some act that they made, some immigration act. Like, for me, if you've been watching any of my videos, you know I support Trump. I support all and everything he's doing. Not everything, right? But everything when it comes to this riots and protests, and when it comes to using a strong hand, Trump, he has that down. Um, for one thing, I do believe it was smart for him to send in the Army, the Marines and the National Guard, because what it seems like right now is like, even the National Guard and the Marines, but the law enforcement in general, they're just kind of letting things happen. They are pushing back the protesters and kind of hitting them with rubber bullets and whatnot. But if this was 50, 60 years ago, if this was 50, 60 years ago, and it was in the same exact spot and they were doing the same exact stuff, they would have been getting shot with real bullets, because it's happened. And they weren't messing around. When they sent out the National Guard last time, the National Guard was taking people out. I think this was in the 60s, the 70s, 80s. There's always protests in LA. There's always riots and stuff going on in LA, right? But personally, I see a lot of people on video and a lot of people supporting it. Like, oh, they're people. But then I also see videos of all these people burning cars and throwing bricks at people that are passing by on the road. Like, if they started throwing bricks at my car while I'm passing by on the road, or like if I had my family or something, like I would have just got out the car and blasted them right there. Or I would have just got out the car and just had to lay hands on them or something. No, I wouldn't have just been like, oh, it's cool, he's throwing bricks, I'm just going to pass right by him. No, I'm going to run him over, or her, or whoever is being violent. I meet violence with violence, I don't see when this world became so oh, it's okay to get bullied, but if you fight the bully back, you're a bad guy, It's never made sense to me. It's just never made sense to me, honestly. There's a few more things. I'm not really going to touch on them too much. There was a war that I just recently heard about. It's like with Israel and Iran. They're talking about Iran is making a nuclear bomb, and they're planning on using it. I don't know how much of, clickbait that is, or, they could just be trying to get views. Just like most of the stuff that you see. Even, they make it seem like it's all of LA burning down, but it's not. I have family that live in LA, they don't even see that stuff. But it is going down, but it's not everywhere. And I hope they end up just keeping that contained in LA to like those specific areas, and it doesn't spread around, because fires spread quick, right? I live in Oakland, right? I live in Oakland, California. And one time, somebody had stole a car, and this is totally off subject. They had stole a car from like a dealership, and they were getting chased by the police, whatever. They had got away, But they ended up ditching it in front of my apartment complex. I guess the radiator fluid, I guess they had crashed or something, and the radiator fluid was like gushing out. And they ditched it over by my house, and it exploded. And it blew up like a bunch of other cars. And if you don't believe me, you can look that shit up, right? I'm not gonna tell you where I live, but I'll tell you kind of the area. I live in Adams Point, right? Over in Oakland, California. If you just type that into Google or probably YouTube, because I know they had some newscasters out there. You can just type in like Adams Point fire. It's probably like 10 years ago though. It might be a little hard to find, but it happened, and like one car exploded, and then another one caught fire, and then another one caught fire, and they were just all blowing up. Boom, 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 boom. And like I wasn't even there. When I came back, I was just like, because me and my mom were just moving there. So we're like moving our stuff back and forth, and we just came there, and we're just like, what's going on? Like, we're just moving our stuff here, and the place is already burned down. And like, either way, they had got it fixed and whatnot, but it literally had caught part of my apartment complex on fire. Like the whole front of the building was like caught on fire, right? Luckily, we stayed like in the back, so it didn't affect us, but it did affect a lot of people that had cars out there. Luckily, I didn't have a car at the time, so I wasn't really affected. But anyway, I want to get back to, some of the things that are happening really with LA. Like I said, if you guys support that, go to Mexico. I don't have, you're going to say you're an American, but you're supporting people hurting Americans. And they're not really doing anything. They weren't really supposed to be here. At the end of the day, if you came here illegally, you should have to go back, and call me harsh. I mean, that's just how it is. You don't see us being able to go over there and buy things and buy a house and have a job and live out to another country for 20, 30 years without even them knowing, really. And that's okay. Like, I remember, because I'm 32, I remember growing up, like being like 10, even earlier than that. I remember I had friends, a lot of them were Latino, Mexican, and I'd be like, oh, like I'm surprised, like I just got my social security card or my ID, and I'm like, oh, like I remember my ID, I can remember it by heart, I remember my social by heart. And they're like, what's a social? We don't have a social. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a social? And they're like, oh, we're here illegally, like my parents like brought us here, and like blah 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 blah, and like their thing was like, oh, if you have kids here, you're able to stay here. And it's like, I always was like, okay, I mean, I don't really, this was a long time ago when I was a kid, right? I don't really talk to those people anymore, right? But it was always weird. It always left like a weird taste in my mouth. Even with other races too, though, like Indians, and I'm half Indian, right? And like just other people that come over here illegally, and then somehow they get assistance from our government. But then I can't get assistance from my own government because I work. And it's like, but they're working too. It's not like they're homeless, but yet they get assistance from the government. Like, I can go on and on about that. Like, I know a lot of immigrants that come over, they'll get like free tax. They'll get tax exempt for like the first year. Then they'll open a business and make all profit, for the first year, and they don't have to pay any taxes. So if you find out a way to bubble and use that way to get free money for the first year on your income, you're good. And then you just capitalize for the first year, and then you can use that as startup money. Americans don't get that. Like, like I remember growing up when I was younger, I was in like middle school. I remember a lot of kids getting free lunch. And my dad had died, so like my mom was a single mom. We barely really had any money. Like, she had a decent job and worked for the government, but she didn't really have that much money after my dad died. And like, but I couldn't qualify because she made like $2,000 or $3,000 more. Like the cutoff was 35 grand, and she made like 37 or something. And it's like, that's barely enough, So it's a lot of programs that I feel. Oh, there's a dog passing by. Sorry. I feel like there's a lot of programs that they take advantage of And there's a lot of things that we can be using ourselves, right? But we don't because we can't. Sorry, y'all, I had to fix my camera real quick. It's cold out here. I'm over here. I work in San Francisco, so it's really cold. And I usually record my videos on like my lunch. And I work swing shift, so it's like, you know, it's cold. I got this little hoodie on. Anyway, I'm getting off subject. So basically, what I've been against a long time since I was a kid is how immigrants and people from other countries get more benefits than we do, you know, and, you know, I'm all for helping people that need help and whatnot, but what about us that are working, you know, and haven't stopped working? And we constantly work. We're the lifeblood of the economy, and they don't really care. They're like, oh, you can work, you're an American, you should have a great life. And it's like, most of us are living worse than them though now. And at the end of the day, I feel like if you work harder, you should get more benefits. It's like, oh, this person, he's been putting in 60, 80 hours a week, 40 hours a week for the past 10 years. He should get a tax break for a year, you know, or like, you know, this American has been putting this many hours in working with, it can even be, you know, just working in general. And you build up to a certain status when it comes to how many hours you've worked in a certain amount of years. And you get some type of reward. It can be like like I said, like a tax break, or maybe you get a bonus, or maybe you get something that helps you put a down payment towards your house, or a car, or something, you know? Like, why can't we get some type of assistance from the government even though we're working? I feel like if the harder you work, the more assistance you should get, you know? Even like, I feel like that would just kind of solve everything. Like, it's like the more hours you put into work that is actually like sustaining the economy, the more benefits you should receive. It shouldn't be like, oh, you don't work, so you get the most benefits. Unless you absolutely need them. That's the only reason. But if you're like fully capable of working, there should be no reason why you can't work. You shouldn't just be living off like food stamps and whatever for the rest of your life, right? Anyway, I'm getting kind of off topic. Really, what I want to do is wrap this up in a conclusion of, I support Trump, and I support a lot of things that are happening going against illegals, and a lot of people may find that appalling or may find it, you know, I don't really care how they find it, right? They can find it however they want. All I know is that I feel better knowing that eventually us Americans will get helped, and maybe they'll actually have some funding, you know? Why do you think Job Corps just got cut out? Why do you think everybody's getting laid off? Why do you think it's hard to find jobs? You know, and everybody's like, oh, well, you know, they have jobs and they're making our economy run. Like, no, they're not. You know what they're doing is they're making money here and they're sending it back to Mexico. They're making money here and they're sending it back to India. They're making money here and they're sending it back to Vietnam. They're making money here, and I can go on for days. They're sending it to other countries and then building up their life in the other country. And then once they're ready to retire, they just go to the other country. We don't have that option. So we're stuck here supporting people that don't even care about us. They don't care about you. All right? So just think about that. All right? Anyway, I got to get back to work. I hope y'all have a good day. I hope you have a good night. And hasta la luego.